Okay, so these are some of the project planning tools as you may see on your screen. So every time we come up with implementing a particular program or a scheme, we have to plan for it, right? And the reason why we plan for it is because we are better prepared to deliver on the asks, deliver on the objectives of the program, because a lot of resources go into the kind of programs that we work in, right? A lot of human resources, a lot of money goes into it, a lot more funds goes into it. So one needs to be cognizant of where the money is going and to what extent will it be utilized and how is it going to contribute to the overall objective of the program, scheme, whatever we're talking about. Right. So there are some, okay, so don't worry, I mean, I'll speak about all the topics that we are covering here. So there are a lot of project planning tools that are available. The first of them being the theory of change. Probably this is something that you would have heard about or maybe worked on in the past and in many of the programs or the schemes that you've already been working on. So theory of change, TOC, is something that we call it. And have we worked with log frames? A show of hands, please. Have we ever worked with log frames? TOCs, theory of change. Probably many of us would have worked with theory of change. Never? Have we seen it? Have we heard about it? Great. Results frameworks. So that was the first component of the session today. So definitely I'm assuming that all of us would have heard about it. Results framework. Right? Has any one of us ever seen a results framework? Never? Okay. That's great. I mean, we are starting with a clean slate then. And logic models? Any clue what a logic model is? Okay, perfect. So these are basically project planning tools. Theory of change basically talks about what goes into the project. What are the different kinds of activities that you're going to undertake as part of your project? And if you do those activities, what is it going to translate into? What is the output of each of these activities? And if you get those outputs, what will be the outcomes of those outputs? And finally, you talk about the impact level indicators. So these four things majorly. We're talking about activities or inputs. We're talking about outputs, which is going to be the immediate impact or the immediate translation of the activities that you do. Then these outputs will move into outcomes, which might take a longer gestation period or longer time to convert. And then finally, you're talking about impact level indicators. Now let's talk about a very, very simple example. In fact, I'll just project a theory of change in front of you here. This is exactly what we were talking about. If you look at the red boxes here, the activity inputs. I'll share the presentations and all the documents with you, so you don't have to write or take notes unless it is very, very important. Just be with me and participate as much as possible, right? Activities and inputs followed by outputs, outcomes, and impacts. Have we heard about these terms earlier in any of our projects? Activity inputs, it's very clear. What are we going to do as a part of our project? The different processes, it could be processes, it could be like providing trainings, right? It could be maybe just getting the infrastructure in place, maybe getting the teams in place, the recruitment of the human resources in place, right? So these are all kinds of activities that we perform on all kinds of projects that we've worked on, right? Similarly, outputs are the immediate translation of these activities into something. Right. So let's just take this example. The first component that we are talking about here is capacity building of institutions and its staff, joint actions through collaboration, and establishing agriculture stewardship council. So we are basically talking about two kinds of things. One is capacity building sessions, which are basically training sessions, right? So the input here or the activity that is undertaken as a part of this project in the component A is training or capacity building. So that is one. Second, we're also talking about establishing agriculture stewardship council. So it's basically a aggregation of different kind of people under one group, under one council. So we are also getting people together for some collective action. Two kinds of things, training and getting people together to do some kind of a work, right? Now, what will be the immediate translation of these activities? The moment you provide a technical training to them, it will help them to prepare commodity vision plan. So this is basically an example that is coming out from the livelihood space. We're talking about an SHG-led model in which there are different kinds of structures. So you would find self-help groups being formed, and the self-help groups within the village, they combine together to form a village organization. The village organizations in a particular block or the Gram Sabha might come together to form CLF, cluster level federations, right? So basically we are talking about what will be the immediate impact of it. So that comes under outputs, and outcomes are those kinds of translations that take longer gestation period or longer time to be converted into some system. For example, if you provide a training, they'll be better prepared to prepare a commodity vision plan, and then there will be enhanced capacity of the institutions and staff. So the capacities of the institutions and staff will improve over a period of time, right? Let's say you've provided another training, say after two months. Then it also contributes to enhancing the capacities of the institutions to prepare certain plans, right? And this will finally lead into impact level indicators. So impact level indicators are a very high level sort of the target that you are supposed to achieve. So for example, if there is a 5-year long program that basically talks about enhancing the income of the households, that becomes an impact level indicator, because we know for sure that incomes won't increase overnight. It will take a lot of time for it to come to that, right? If you're talking about improvement in the overall well-being of the households, so well-being is a very, very composite indicator, right? So for improved well-being, what needs to improve? Can anyone tell me? Definitely incomes need to go up. Sorry? Standard of living needs to go up. Health of the household members need to go up. Very nice. What all contributes to the well-being of the households? So we've talked about health, we've talked about income, we've talked about one more thing, sorry? Education. Perfect. Education status of the household should also go up. Standard of living needs to go up. So we have talked about 4 things. What are the other things?
Basic things like water, shelter, and
access to amenities. Basic access to amenities should improve, right? So these 5 things, and if you talk about, there are going to be 10 more things, right? So it's basically a composite indicator that we are looking at. It is not a very simple indicator. It is a very, very complex sort of an objective that we are trying to achieve, and obviously we know for sure that no matter how good the program is, it is always going to take a lot of time for it to be achieved, for this objective to be achieved. So that becomes your impact level indicator. That becomes the impact level indicator. Has any one of us worked on any World Bank funded assignments?
Yes, RTCP bound.
You have worked on? RTCP. Okay. RNTCP. Okay. Nice. So have you heard of the term PDO? It's sometimes called Primary Development Objective, or Principal Development Objective is also something what the World Bank calls it. And it's basically a term that is common across the government and the World Bank. So Primary Development Objective is basically the impact level indicator that I am talking about. It is the ultimate goal, the ultimate objective that my program is trying to achieve. So that is my PDO, that is my primary development objective. That is my impact level indicator. Okay. For all programs, the impact level indicator is the key indicator which basically tells you whether the program was successful or not. We are all trying to assess whether this was attained or not. This vertical was attained or not, because this is what the program set out to achieve, right? And it had some targets in mind. Say, let's say 20% of the household should have an increased income of 18% or more, right? Now that is an indicator. So, and for that you need an evaluation which basically checks whether that 18% increase in household income was achieved or not towards the end of the program, right? If it was achieved, well and good, the program gets an A ranking. If it does not, then one needs to look into the reasons why it could not achieve its objectives and probably mitigate that gap when a second phase, maybe an extension of that program is coming the next time, right? I'll show you another example. Might not be visible very clearly. Okay, but I'll just take you through something else as well. Have we ever looked at something like this? A results framework? Do we relate to it now? What does it talk about? So results framework is basically a table or a matrix in which all your indicators are mentioned on the left hand side. Forget about the DLI. DLI is a different kind of a term, disbursement linked indicators. So basically the payment is due. So if the World Bank is funding some program of the government, if you achieve a certain target, then the payment will be credited to the government's account. Okay, so forget about DLI. Just look into the baseline and the endline targets here. Right. So let's look into the first indicator, and they're talking about an outcome indicator here. Percentage of watershed committees and GPs which demonstrate satisfactory watershed management as measured through a performance rating system. This is some indicator. Okay. They know for sure the baseline value for this is 0. They have pegged an endline target at 30%. So that's the target, right? So they have very clearly mentioned that this is an outcome level indicator. It is not an impact level indicator. If we go up one more page, if we go down one more page, there are several other indicators that I already mentioned. So within this larger indicator, you can see some indentation here, some gap here, right? And now they're talking about percentage of women-headed watershed committees and GPs which demonstrate satisfactory watershed management as measured through a performance rating system. So earlier we were talking about the performance rating system at an aggregate level, at an overall level. Now we are talking about percentage of women that are contributing to the watershed committees. Okay, so that is a sub-indicator that is there in the results framework. Right, now again, let's look into this indicator. There is one more indicator on land-related information. So land area treated with science-based watershed management technologies in hectares. Right, so a few observations here. What can we see here? The indicator is very, very simple. It is very clearly mentioned that it is an outcome indicator. We are also saying in which unit is this indicator being measured. So in bracket, they have mentioned it very clearly in hectare. Right. Now, if you look at these two indicators which are falling just below this, again there is an indentation here, and these are sub-indicators. So which says of which area in Karnataka in hectares is this much, of which area in Odisha is this much. So they have separate targets for the two geographies, for the two states, right? 1 lakh hectares in Karnataka and 1 lakh hectares in Odisha. So what happens in a results framework is that you have your indicators mentioned on the left hand side. There is a demarcation of whether those indicators are impact level indicators, outcome level indicators, output level indicators, or activities inputs. Right? They are all mentioned on the left hand side, and in front of them you will have a target being mentioned very clearly, that this is the end line target, this is the target that the program aims to achieve towards the end of the program. Is that simple? I've tried to explain results framework in a nutshell, so that saves us on a lot of time, the entire session, right? But obviously, I mean, I'm joking. Basically, we'll spend a lot of time on learning the terms and the terminologies that we've used here. But do we have a basic understanding of what a results-based framework is? It's very simple. What are you trying to achieve is mentioned on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you simply have a target value ascertained to it, right? Okay. I'm sure all of us would have seen this in some capacity, maybe somewhere on some of the projects for sure. No? Okay. What are the different kinds of planning tools that you have used in your assignments? Have you used any ever? No? None? Anyone ever used an LFA, logical framework? No? Okay. Can we switch off these lights as well? Sorry, might get a bit dark. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with results framework, which was the first component for today's session. First of all, why do we need it? The answer is already mentioned there, but there's a lot of text. You can always read it and just let me know if there's anything that is confusing. You don't have to write anything, don't take notes. I'll share all the presentations and everything with you. Just stay with me and let's deliberate on whatever is being presented. So first of all, every time a scheme is launched, we need to know whether it succeeded or not, whether it was a success or not towards the end of the program. So for example, if there was a program that was supposed to improve the sanitation practices in a particular area, let's talk about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Swachh Bharat Mission, right? And say in the next 6 years, from 2016 to 2020, the government aimed at 100% toilet coverage. So that was the target, right? Then maybe in 2019, 2020, the government would want to conduct an inline evaluation just to get a sense of whether 100% of the target was achieved or not, or to what extent the toilets were constructed, right? So that, let's say an evaluation is conducted and we get to know that the government has been able to construct around 95% of the toilets, or at least 95% of the households have a functional toilet, right? The target was to achieve 100% coverage. If the evaluation says that only 95% of the households have been able to get the toilet, which means we are falling 5% short, right? So first point, it is difficult to know if the programs have succeeded or failed, so we need to have a target in place. So that's why a results-based framework or a results framework is required. We need to set the targets and to understand whether they have been achieved or not. Also, you need to mention what needs to be achieved. So if you see all the indicators that are mentioned on the left hand side, it basically tells you what is the program looking to achieve, right? All these indicators are basically pointing towards what is the program trying to achieve. And what if you develop a tool? Why do we develop a tool in the first place? What is the need to develop a tool? Say if I am working on a project and I need to make sure that I am able to achieve my target in some duration, and I am developing a tool for it. Why would I need to develop a tool for it? I am basically trying to ensure that the effectiveness of the program, right? So for any program, I would have put in a lot more resources. Human resources would go in, right? A lot of infrastructure might be created. A lot of people might be working on it. A lot of people might have been onboarded or recruited for it, right? But these people have been recruited to perform certain tasks, right? Whether those people are performing those tasks on the given time frame or in the given time frame or not, that is something that the results-based framework helps us to achieve. And whether if they are working on something, whether it is translating into the types of outputs and outcomes and impact level indicators, that is also something that the results-based framework basically helps us to achieve. So it's a basic, simple Excel planning. So Excel, Microsoft Excel, we all are aware of it. So it's simply that you mention all the indicators on the left hand side, mention the targets on the right hand side, and there are a lot of nuances that also we'll discuss in the subsequent slides that goes into preparing a results framework. It is very, very simple. Please don't think that it is something out of the blue, right? It might be a new term for us, but the essence of it is something that we do on a regular basis. So for example, if we have to drop our children to the school every day, we know we need to get up at 6. We know that they have to get ready by 7 so that we can drop them to the school by 7:30, 8. Right. So there is a certain process that goes into it, and we have already demarcated or listed those processes, and we know that if those processes are attained, the child will go to the school on time. It is that simple. So the impact here is the child going to the school, the child achieving his objective of going to the school. So that becomes your objective, that becomes your impact level indicator. It is that simple, right? Okay, so we've discussed a lot about this already. Results-based framework is basically a top-down approach. So you work backwards on this. How do we prepare an RBM or a results-based framework matrix? Do we have markers? These are the markers, no? No worries, I'll take it. Yeah. Okay. Just give me an example from any of the schemes that you're working on right now. Any scheme, any program. Sorry?
Child protection.
Child protection scheme. Perfect. We're talking about a child protection scheme. Please pardon my bad handwriting. I hope you'll be able to figure it out. Do we have a duster in here? Watch it, it's there. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, a child protection scheme. What are we trying to achieve here? What is the ultimate objective of the child protection scheme? Why do we need this scheme in the first place? Anyone?
Protect children.
To protect children. Right. Let's be more specific. To protect children from what? To protect children
From sexual offences.
from sexual exploitation. Right. Now this is a very good learning, and thank you for this. So the indicator needs to be specific. The first point that was mentioned, to protect children, was too broad. right? A program, a scheme needs to address a very specific objective. So that sir has already mentioned for sexual, they have to protect the children from sexual exploitation. We can also make it more specific. We can mention the geography in which it is supposed to protect the children. It cannot be for the entire world, though we might want it to be, but you only have certain resources at your disposal. So you can only help children in certain geographies. So let's also mention the geography here. Let's say in Shillong, or let's say in the state of Meghalaya. How can we make it more specific? Can we make it more specific?
The age of the children.
The age of the children, perfect. So we are talking about children of a particular age group. Let's say under 5 years, or maybe under 10 years, or say 0 to 18. Right, 0 to 18 years. Very nice. How can we make it more specific? Take a wild guess. There is no right or wrong answers at all.
Gender.
5 minutes.
Yeah, we can also talk about gender. So are we talking about, gender might have like 40 or 50 gender roles these days, but I am just looking into the traditional way of looking at gender, males and females. So let's say we are talking about females of the age group of 0 to 18, which means the newborns, the adolescents as well, and the females who have recently become adults, right? So we're talking about all these three categories. Okay, perfect. That's great. There is one more thing that we can also think about. You have only limited resources at your disposal, right? So you can only work for a certain duration. Can we also mention the time frame here?
Yes.
We can also mention the time frame, right? Say from 2023 to 2024. Okay. Let us also mention the name of the month also, if required. Okay. Is that all? Are we more specific now? Or is there anything that we are still missing? This is a very good indicator. Thank you so much. Right. So this is our impact level indicator or primary development objective. This is the indicator statement or that we are trying to achieve. Now this is only an indicator. Okay. This is not exactly an indicator. This is actually a sort of a target. Okay. Now a target also needs to have a number in place. To protect 1 lakh children, to protect 2 lakh children, to protect 10 lakh children, right? So you also need to give a target here to protect, say, 1 lakh children in the age bracket of 0 to 18 years. We're talking about female child from 2023 to 24. Is that all? This becomes a good target for us. Now there's a difference here. I'll just mention the difference between a target and an indicator. Target, indicator. Indicators are very simple. It might be in percentage, it might be in means, or it might be in numbers. Okay, so ideally it could have been percentage of children aged 0 to 18 years, females being prevented or been prevented from sexual exploitation from 2022 to 24. This becomes a very, very simple indicator. Now the target would be 1 lakh children or 20% children, or it could be only 2, right? Either we mention in percentages or we mention the total numbers, and the rest of the statement will remain the same. Now what do we see here? What is the difference between target and indicator? There's a very, very thin line here. Target has a number to it. Indicator simply says proportion, total numbers, right? Or means of children. So this is where the difference lies. This is the only difference between the target and indicator. This becomes an indicator. Right? And this is the target, wherein you are mentioning the numbers, the percentages, whatever. Right? Here you haven't mentioned 20%. If you had mentioned 20% here, then it would not have been an indicator. Then it would have become a target. Right? The moment you mention the number, it becomes a target. Right? So good that we finalize on a target here. Great. Now let's look into the kinds of activities that we are doing to achieve this target. What are the kinds of activities that we are doing? Child protection. People working in child protection, please feel free. Just tell me the activities that we are doing here. Awareness programs. We're talking about activities here. Awareness programs. What else? Home visits. Very nice. Home visits. Sorry, there was one more. Counseling. Very nice. Counseling.
Social investigation.
Social investigations. Let's just stick to these 4 activities for now. Let's keep it simple. Okay. Thank you so much for this. Now, awareness programs, how are these conducted? So you will reach out to a certain set of people in a certain community, maybe get them together in a form of group, discuss about the kinds of issues that they are having, start off with more of a rapport building sort of a thing, right? So that you have their trust before they start trusting you with all the kinds of details that they are about to share, right? So you talk to them about their lives, what are the challenges that they are facing. Then you also try and relate with them. We are also sharing the same problems in our areas. Now the trust is built. Okay. Then you talk about the specifics. How do you have children? Do you have children in this age group? Right? What are the challenges that you faced? Have you come across any kind of an instance of sexual exploitation ever? Then they start revealing things to you that yes, when they go to certain kinds of schools, or maybe when they go to certain kinds of bus stands, when they wait for the car to pick them up on maybe certain roads, that's where I feel most scared that something might happen to them, right? So these kinds of things happen. So basically that's what is being done as a part of the awareness program. Then you tell them about the kinds of solutions that you might have for them. You might tell them that if you give a phone to your child, and if this is the auto dial or the phone number that is on their auto dial, they can simply press a number and police would reach them, or we will reach them, right? We can also try and tell them about certain kinds of areas and certain kinds of people that they should avoid, right? We can also educate them about certain kinds of touch that might be inappropriate for the children, right? So this is all falling into awareness campaigns, maybe some sort of a counseling also, right? So we are counseling the parents, we are counseling the children also, right? So these are certain kinds of activities that we are conducting. What is it translating into? So let's say you've just conducted an awareness campaign or a counseling session. What will it translate into? People getting aware of it, right? So you've conducted an awareness campaign, people got aware about certain kinds of issues, practices that could be done to avoid sexual exploitation of the children in the age group of 0 to 8, right? It is very simple. Let's keep it very, very simple. So that's your output. Awareness campaigns being organized, that is the activity. Now people have become more aware. That is your output level indicator. Simple. Counseling. People are more aware of mitigation strategies to avoid certain kinds of situations or to deal with certain kinds of situations. The parents are more equipped now. The children are more equipped now to deal with certain kinds of situations. That is a simple outcome. After training there, and this is a simple outcome that has come out of it. Sorry, this is a simple output that has come out of it. What could be the outcome here?
So, what would be the output indicator?
Sorry?
What about output indicator?
The output indicator, it's very simple. So, if an awareness program is being organized, the indicator at this stage would be how many awareness programs have been organized. Right? And if you set a target to it, you say that in between 2023-24, 30 trainings were supposed to be organized, or 30 awareness campaigns were supposed to be organized. That becomes your target. Right? So here in this case, the indicator is simple. How many awareness programs were organized? Right? In this case, if you would want to see what was the indicator, proportion of people that have become more aware, or the number of people that have become more aware, that is your indicator. Indicator has to be measurable, right? So you can measure it in three different ways. You can either talk about the total numbers, or you can talk about means, or you can talk about percentages. Right? Sorry.
What is the difference between output indicator and outcome indicator?
Yeah. Activity indicators, we don't have any confusion here. Everyone knows what an activity is. You know, a certain task that you perform as a part of your project. So this is clear. The immediate translation of that activity is called output. So if you conducted awareness programs, what would be the immediate output of it, or the immediate, result of that? The people would get aware. It's very simple, right? So the immediate translation or the immediate result of conducting a particular activity is output. Right? So let's say this training session or this capacity building session. Okay, so there is a session that is being conducted on results based framework. What will be the output of it?
No, results framework.
The knowledge regarding results based framework has improved for the participants. Right? I hope that be the case. Right? So, yeah. And what will be the outcome here? Remember, we talked about outcome. Outcomes are kinds of translations that would take a longer gestation period, longer time to convert. Right? So, what could be certain kinds of indicators that might take more time to convert? Say, if I have conducted some awareness programs, people have become more aware. Now, what will these people do if they are more aware? They'll be more alert. They'll be more equipped to deal with certain kinds of situations. They'll be able to take actions, right? Right. So if I put all of that in a basket, can we say that we've made or we have built more resilient communities? Or better prepared communities to deal with certain kinds of situations? That becomes an outcome indicator. Very simple. Awareness campaign was the activity translated into people becoming more aware, right? And then people becoming better equipped or better prepared to deal with certain kinds of situations. Maybe the community has become more resilient, or maybe the community has, yeah, please go ahead.
Say suppose an awareness campaign is being conducted.
Yeah.
Beforehand we have it in our mind that we'll focus on 100 people.
Yes.
The output will be people getting aware.
Yes.
Awareness.
Yes.
And our outcome will focus on the 100 people, whether 100 people are achieved or not. So is it that?
No. So we are not talking about numbers here at all. Let's just think about the program in general. What will the program try to achieve? Let's not think about the indicators right now. Forget about the indicators. Okay, what is an indicator? What's the target? Forget about it. We have very clearly mentioned the target right at the very top. Now the program is working towards getting to that target. These are some of the activities that have been performed. Right? We are focusing on one of the activities, which is to create or conduct awareness programs. The immediate output of this would be that if you conducted a training, people would get more aware of certain kinds of things. Right? What are you trying to achieve as a part of your awareness campaigns? You are trying to make resilient communities. You are trying to equip them better in dealing with certain kinds of situations. You are making them better prepared to deal with certain kinds of situations. Now that is an outcome indicator. And why are we calling it an outcome indicator? Because it cannot be solved in one training. You might have to conduct like 20 trainings, 10 trainings, quarterly trainings, monthly trainings, right? Trainings as and when required by the people, as and when required by the community. Maybe say after 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, after a year, people might be able to come to this stage that they've become better equipped to handle certain kinds of situations in their areas. It will take longer time. What could be another example of this? Let's say we all know about Swachh Bharat Mission, SBM, right? One of the objectives was to definitely construct a lot of toilets. The other objective was to improve the utilization of those toilets also. So in many parts of the country, you would have seen that the toilets were not being utilized. So even the phase 2 of Swachh Bharat Mission is basically focusing more on improving the behavior change. Now behavior change, it takes a lot of time to change, right? People who have not been washing their hands, or maybe washing their hands with simple water after defecation, it takes a lot of time for them to change their behavior into using soap as after they have defecated. Right, so it's a behavior change that we're talking about. It will not be an immediate translation of your activity. So it's not an output level indicator. What is it? Either it could be an outcome level indicator or an impact level indicator. Let's say the only objective of SBM was to create a behavioral change. Right, then it would have become an outcome level indicator. Right, in this case it will be an outcome level indicator. Okay, right. So this becomes an outcome level indicator. Now I am telling you one thing very clearly, and please be with me here. You would always have a lot of activities being conducted, which might translate into fewer outputs or an equal number of outputs. Okay, so if you're talking about the number of activities, they might be equal to or more than the total number of outputs. It's basically a pyramid. It's basically a pyramid that we are talking about. Not exactly like the one that I've drawn, but still closer.
We are working under an assumption.
Yeah.
Right. First, we have to have an assumption, right?
Yeah.
Before we
Right. Right.
So if you work under an assumption, won't the outcome be actually numbers in the sense like lesser numbers of cases reported to the police and all that?
Yeah.
Won't that be
that can also be. That is an outcome. You've mentioned a very important point. So you're saying that lesser number of crimes related to sexual exploitation of children in the age group of 0 to 18 females reported in 2023-24 or maybe in the last 1 month. That is also an outcome level indicator. Thank you so much for this. What is it getting translated into? Your number of cases reported have decreased. Right? Number of such instances have reduced, and that's why the number of cases have reduced. Though usually in these kinds of situations, it is the other way around. Right? So if the number of cases have dropped also, that is also a problem. Because maybe it is also a social stigma or a social taboo that people don't want to reach out to the police station to report it. Right? So that has been one of the challenges that we've seen with working on these kinds of mandates, especially when we are talking about NCBI data. Right? Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing this outcome. Yeah. And what we are saying that there'll be like 2 to 3 more outcomes that would have come up, and finally they are translating into this. Or this is the hypothesis that if I conduct these many activities, this will translate into these many outputs. These many outputs will translate into these many outcomes, and these many outcomes will finally address my target, or which is my impact level indicator. Simple. This is very simple, right? Now just imagine you put this in the form of a table or a matrix, just like the one I showed you. On the left hand side, there will be all these activities mentioned with their targets. So for example, awareness campaigns, let's say 30 awareness campaigns have to be organized. Right? For home visits, let's say 100 home visits have to be conducted. Counseling, 100 counseling have to be conducted. Right? What are you simply doing? You are listing down all these activities on the left hand side and mentioning their targets on the right hand side. Very simple. What you can also do is you can mention the time frames. So for example, in the first month, only 10 counseling must be done. In second month, it should increase to 30. In the 5th month, it should go to 100. What are you trying to do here? You're trying to set some targets for the program team so that they work accordingly. Because at the initiation of the project, obviously you know for sure that there'll be a lot of human resource that will be onboarded, recruitment and everything, and their capacities also needs to be built. They need to be aware of what we are going to do as a part of the scheme of this program, right? So maybe in the first month they are able to conduct only like 10 counseling sessions, and that is more of a possible scenario for them. But once they start working on it, they'll get more adept at it, right? They'll get more experience. Their efficiencies might go up. So you can't stay with a very low target after that, right? You would want to increase the number of counseling, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to ensure that you have a very good outreach. You are reaching out to many people at the end of the day, right? So this is.
So in the process,
Yeah.
it can be filtered out into minute details, no?
Right. You can be as detailed as possible.
Yeah. So in the process.
Yes. I mean, one should be as detailed as possible. That in the first one, so for example, let's say this is an activity. Awareness programs is one of the activities. Now, if I'm creating a results framework, I'll mention this here. Indicator, awareness campaigns. Right. On the right hand side, I can also mention a time frame. First month 20, second month 40, third month 60, and so on and so forth. I can have the plan for the entire year.
Backlog also.
And they can be a backlog. And what will happen is these are the targets that you have set, and when you're going for an evaluation, you simply look into whether 20 were conducted here or not, 40 were conducted or 60 were conducted or not. If yes, what worked for the project? If not, why did it not work for the project? That is also a learning.
So certain change even in between need to be done.
Right. So That is basically results framework. There is, there is no rocket science here. It's a very fancy term that we are using here. Otherwise, the objective is very clear. Right.
Very important, no?
Exactly. So it was maybe just I should have put the table up earlier, but it is very, very simple. It is very simple. We're simply mentioning the different targets. Now, does anyone have any confusion regarding outcome indicators, output indicators, activities, processes, impact level indicators, or is it clear to everyone?
So you said, I'll just use my term.
Yeah.
X number of activities should be less than or equal to X number of output.
Yeah.
Is that dogmatic or something related to this project?
No. So it is usually the case. So for example, it would happen that maybe counseling and awareness are both contributing to getting more people aware about this, right? So usually what happens is either it is a one-to-one matching, like so each of these activities are translating into one output, or it could be mostly it is like this, that 2 or 3 are coming together and they are coming to form one output. So what will happen is that the numbers will keep on decreasing as you move up the ladder. That's why I said it's more going to be a pyramid sort of a structure. If you go from here to here, it basically talks about how it is getting done, how the program is getting implemented, right? And if you come from the top to the down, basically tells you why. Can answer a lot many questions as well. But how is basically, so if you conduct all these activities, these might be the outputs that you get. If you get all these outputs, these might translate into these many outcomes. And if you get those outcomes, these outcomes put together will be contributing to the overall target or the impact level indicator. Right? Now, if we have understood this is the basic premise for an LFA. Law frame is what I have mentioned here. A theory of change. This is basically what we prepared is a theory of change. A theory of change is always bottom up. Results framework largely is we start with the target and then we think how do we go about implementing this. It's top down. It's basically you would never find an organization taking up all these 3 instruments in one go, unless they have a lot of resources or a lot of mind space to think about all these 3. Even if you come up with any of these 3, LFA or theory of change or results framework, that should suffice. Okay. Now what we have created here is a theory of change, but there is one major thing that is missing as a part of this theory of change. What is it? Can anyone say? Any program is working in an ecosystem, and this is not a clinical experiment wherein the temperature is controlled, the kind of food that is being provided to the mice that is controlled, right? So we are dealing with human subjects here. There's a lot of externalities that comes into play. There's a lot of external situations that actually come into play, which basically goes on to say that we also need to account for risks and assumptions whenever we are preparing a theory of change. So every time you see a theory of change, you would always see a list of risks and assumptions mentioned on the side, maybe at the bottom. So for example, what could be a particular risk? One major risk that we've all gone through from 2020, late 2019 to 2022, COVID. What if COVID strikes? The entire project will go for a toss, right? You will not be able to go for a home door-to-door counseling, right? COVID is a major risk and assumption. What else?
Natural disasters.
Natural disasters. What if flood comes? You can't go to everyone's household, forget about the floods, listen to me, I am here to counsel you. Right? So that won't happen. So that's a major risk for the project. What else? Say, let's think about in this kind of a situation. What could be the risk other than the ones that we've already talked about? We've talked about COVID, we've talked about one more. Sorry, what was the second one that we talked about? Disasters, the natural disasters. What is the third one? Any other risks and assumptions that we can think of? People not coming forward. That is also a risk. Let's say you started with the project and you had a very good LFA in place, you had a very good theory of change in place, you have written like 2 papers on it, and you are super confident that it will work, but when you go for the counseling, nobody is even opening the door for you. Right? So community participation is a major risk and assumption. So you need to have some buy-in from the community. To have some buy-in from the community, usually you need some political participation also in your program. Coordination with the stakeholders or participation of the stakeholders. Right, that is a very valuable input. If that is not in place, maybe the government is not actually in favor of certain kind of project. Maybe they would rather want to take it up in a different fashion. Maybe they are not going for a home visit or a door-to-door counseling. They want to come up with an app. Right. So in that case, if the government decides, obviously this project will be scrapped. That is also a risk and assumption. What else can go into it? No, I'm not looking for an answer. I just want all of us to participate in the discussion that is happening here. Just think out loud what can possibly go wrong in this particular project.
Riots.
Sorry?
Riots.
Riots can happen. Riots can also happen. That might derail the entire project. People might not trust people anymore. So if you belong to a certain community, you go to the other community for counseling, people might not welcome you. Right, that might also happen. Unfortunate, but that is also a risk and assumption that you have to factor into account. Anything else? Anything that is not too negative, come on. We've talked about disasters, we've talked about COVID. Yeah. This is good. Sorry, it's time for a tea break. I'll just take 2 minutes of your time and then we'll close for this session and then we'll meet after the tea break. Anything else we can think of?
Misunderstanding, clarity, for that matter, I mean, even when we first came for the first phase of this training also,
Right.
many of us were wondering, we are not into research thing, we are not
Right.
into it, so
Yeah.
probably the department is just sending us.
Right.
There's so many things to do at the district level.
Right.
So, and then comes to phase 2 here.
Right.
It's like, we're not ready for not even a month, right?
Right. So maybe there is no clarity in terms of the objectives, and that's why you don't have a buy-in. Probably that can also.
Too early.
Right. Maybe that is a risk and assumption that goes into.
You're saying something also negative. So what if there are no more cases of sexual exploitation?
Oh wow. Yeah. Obviously, that's a very good point. Thank you.
That will not happen.
That means the program goes for a toss. Right. But yeah, that's a fair assumption. That somehow the crime stops and there is no sexual exploitation of the children anymore. So everything is hunky-dory and we are all happy. Right. So yeah, on that note, on a positive note, let's take a tea break. I see, we have to actually darken the entire room because we want some clarity here on the screen. But nevertheless, please don't feel dizzy or sleepy during the conversations. Please participate as much as you can. Do you see some relevance? I hear a very feeble yes. From this side, is it anyways relevant to the kind of work that we're doing here? Or that you usually do on the kind of programs that you work on? Not relevant at all? My God, that's bad. Yeah. Is it relevant? Great. Please call me by my name. I'm Abhishek Sharma. I'm iterating again. Please don't call me sir. Yeah, as soon as you finish writing I wouldn't say the paper, but filling in that form, please feel free to move out and go for a tea break. Back from the chair to the break. Okay, so this is what we did right now. We created a theory of change we mentioned the different activities at the bottom. These were translating into outputs. Then these outputs might be going into some outcomes. And these three are basically outcomes taken together. So outcomes could also be like immediate outcomes, intermediary outcomes, higher order outcomes. So there are different kinds of terms that different people use or different organizations use. And there are finally impact level indicators. Right? Don't worry about it. I'll share the deck with you. Now there are a few other things that are also very, very important. If you remember, when we were creating that theory of change, you would have seen that I marked a lot of arrows everywhere. Right? From activities to outputs, from outputs to outcomes, and from outcomes to impact level indicators, I marked a lot of arrows. And it is not a linear relationship. So this is one major learning that we should have. It is non-linear. By linear I mean, it is not as if that one activity will translate into only one output and one output will translate into one outcome only and one outcome will move into one impact level indicator. It is never that linear. There is a good possibility, like we saw in our example, counseling was also contributing to household resilience. Right? There were door-to-door visits that was also contributing to the resilience of the households. So it is not going to be one thing mapped with one thing only. As you can see, this is contributing to this as well. This is also contributing to this. Similarly, this is also contributing to this. So this particular higher level outcome is basically getting a lot of contributions to different kinds of outputs. So it is never linear. By linear I mean it's not going to be a simple one arrow between the different boxes. So that is one major thing about theory of change. Right. Number two is that all these arrows are basically called causal pathways. These are causal pathways. Pathways we all know, simply the path that is being followed. And the reason why we are calling it causal, because it follows an if-then kind of a relationship. If this is achieved, then it will translate into this, and it will translate into this. If this is achieved, then this will translate into this. If this is achieved, then this will translate into this. There is an if-then sort of a relationship. So that's why it's a cause and effect relationship. So that's why we are calling it a causal relationship. Okay, these are causal pathways that are being followed. And it is very important to mention these causal pathways in a theory of change. What is a theory of change? Let's just disintegrate this term. It talks about theory about a particular change. Why are we doing an evaluation? Why are we working on a program in the first place? We want to bring about some change, positive change in the society, or in some indicator, or in some aspect of the society, right? That's what all the programs are working towards. Okay, so change we get. Now all these causal pathways that we are talking about, at the start of the project, we are preparing the theory of change at the start of the project. The project has just been awarded, the money has come in, now we've all sit together, we are trying to understand how this needs to be implemented. At this stage, we are preparing a theory of change. It is theory as of now, unless implemented or until implemented. So this is a theory as of now for the change that we are trying to address. So it's a theory of change. What does the evaluation do? It simply tests whether this theoretical has actually, or theory has actually moved into practice, and if yes, to what extent, right? So evaluation simply tests this theory. That's all, and that's why I just wanted to disintegrate the term. It's very simple, theory of change. So it's basically all the causal pathways from the activities to outputs, outputs to outcomes, and outcomes to impact level indicators. Now one more thing that I would want to highlight here is that different kinds of organizations use different terminologies. So if you talk about a World Bank, there are different teams that work under the World Bank also, right? And different teams might use different terminologies. Okay, so many would start from an activity moving into outputs, moving into outcomes, and then into impact level indicators. Okay, that is a very, very plain vanilla, simple sort of a terminology that is used by many of the agencies. Okay, now some people might start with outputs, move into different types of outcomes. They would call short term, medium term, long term, and then impact level indicators. Okay, we just need to get the sense of what is the theory of change. These terms are used in different situations by different organizations. There is no set standard to it. Okay, sometimes in this kind of a situation, people won't even mention an impact level indicator. The long term indicator is basically equivalent to the impact level indicator. That also happens, right? In this kind of a situation, people might use activity if they've already thought it through. At the inception stage, if the people have already thought through that this is a set of 100 activities that we need to perform as a part of this project, they already have a clarity, then they move into outputs, then outcome level indicators, short term, mid term, long term. Now this is something that completely depends on the program. So let's say if you have a 10-year long program, then it basically is the onus lies on you to come up with a definition. So maybe anywhere between 0 to 3 years is something that you might call a short-term outcome indicator. Something that can be achieved between 0 to 3 years, right? Anything that can be achieved between 3 to 7 years, you're calling it a mid-term outcome, right? Or anything that is falling between 7 to 10 years, you're calling it a long-term indicator. It varies from program to program. So there is no set duration for the short-term, mid-term, long-term. If it is a 1-year project, then probably the same numbers that I have mentioned in years could be for months. If it is a 3-year project, again, completely depends on you. 0 to 1 year could be the short term, 1 to 2 years could be the mid-term, and 2 to 3 years could be the long-term. There is no specific definition to mentioning the short-term, medium-term, long-term objectives. It is completely dependent on the implementation team to have a discussion with all the stakeholders and finalize the definition of this. So what we've learned is point number 4. The definitions must be finalized in consultation with stakeholders. Theory of change, in my experience, based on the kinds of evaluations that we've done so far, I personally would have conducted more than 50, and the organization would have conducted more than 400 evaluations so far. In none of those assignments, and I can say this with absolute certainty, that the people have been able to come up with a theory of change in one day. This never gets finalized in one day. No matter if you sit with 100 stakeholders, 50 stakeholders, too many cooks, right? But that is also very, very important. As an evaluator, I can't just go there and prepare a theory of change. I can help facilitate the entire conversation. So if this is one group or the stakeholders that are particularly working on one project, then I need to sit with all of you and just facilitate the entire process of getting the activities, outputs, outcomes and impact level indicators. I cannot say, because you are the implementation team, you know it best, you know the project best, right? I'll get a sense of what are the different kinds of activities. Then I'll probably say, okay, this activity might also contribute to this output level indicator. It's basically you all doing the talking. I'm just helping facilitate the entire situation, right? From the evaluation angle. So that's how theory of change or results based framework or anything of that sort, or RLFA is prepared. It is not a one-day job. It is not a one-sitting job. Usually we take like anywhere between 3 to 5 sittings if we have some resources. If we have a lot of resources, obviously we can sit for 10 meetings, right? But usually anywhere between 2 to 5 meetings is what is required to prepare a theory of change. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. From an evaluator's point of view, if I come up with something, it might completely be irrelevant for the implementation team, right? And at the end of the day, we are here to serve the objectives of the implementation and not of the evaluation. The evaluation is for a particular implementation, not vice versa. Okay. Yeah, let's also see one more point here. Okay. Project it again. I'll project it again. Okay, forget about it. Yeah. So as you move, thank you. As you move from the activities to the outputs, and from the outputs to the outcomes, and from the outcomes to the impact level indicator, where do you think in this entire process does the program or the program implementation team has the maximum control of or control over? If I talk about activity, outputs, outcomes, and impact, on which of these four components does the implementation team has a control of or can be controlled by the program team? If this can be controlled, there is a good possibility to certain extent the outputs might also be controlled, right? But the surety or the certainty reduces from the activity to the outputs. Similarly, from the outputs to the outcomes, my control over the theory of change reduces. And definitely nobody has a clue whether this can be achieved or not. Right? So we are also seeing a trend here. We say as we move from the activity higher up to the higher up in the theory of change, the control of the implementation team over the outputs, outcomes, and impact level indicator reduces. So we don't know whether this will happen. We can only imagine that if we do this religiously and if our theory is correct, then we'll be able to achieve the impact level indicators. Okay, so these were some of the points that I just wanted to point out about the theory of change. We also need to come up with a risk and assumption every time we are preparing a theory of change. So theory of change is basically a diagrammatic representation in separate boxes. It follows a bottom-up approach. By bottom-up, I mean you have to start with this way, thinking about the activities, outputs, outcomes, and impact level indicators. Okay? Right? And for each of these points, one needs to mention, there needs to be a description also that goes along with it. So one is the diagrammatic representation with all the arrows and how they are linked to each other and all of that, which we have already created. But there is an explanation that also goes along with it. How is this happening? How is it translating from one component to the other? What are the different number of activities that need to be conducted? All of that has to be put forth in a paragraph, maybe a couple of paragraphs. Not too verbose, but there needs to be an explanation also that goes along with the theory of change. Okay? Right. We've also talked about how each of these statements that we are putting in the different boxes can be converted into indicators. Simply put in the percentages or means or numbers, it becomes an indicator. Sorry, if you simply write percentages or X number or whatever, it becomes an indicator. If you mention the number or the percentage that 20% should get this or 40% should get this, then it becomes a target. Right? Okay, so we've known how to create a theory of change now. How about we just translate this into a results framework? Well, let's also talk about an LFA. Has anyone ever heard of an LFA? I won't ask any subsequent question or follow-up question. I just want to know whether you've ever heard about an LFA. Okay, no worries. Oh, sorry, I'll just switch off slides. Okay. What is the difference here? This is basically the format of an LFA. People might call it a log frame. People might call it a logical framework, analysis. That's why the term LFA. Both mean the same thing. Okay. Somehow, I mean, people in my sector love jargonizing things. Okay, so there are very complex and fancy terms for very, very simple things. It's a log frame, logical framework analysis basically mean the same thing. Okay. Again, your goal or impact is mentioned, followed by outcome level indicators, output level indicators, activities. Same thing. Right? The indicators are also mentioned here. So we are looking at a more structured sort of a situation. Right? The indicators are also mentioned here. What are we also looking? I mean, risks and assumptions is also something that we've discussed in the theory of change. Right? The risks and assumptions are there. In the theory of change, each sentence corresponds to an indicator also. So the indicators are also mentioned here. Forget about project summary here. It's basically a description of what is going into this. Right, so forget about project summary for now. Just look into goal, outcome, output, activities. These are the list of indicators that were already mapped in the results based framework as well as the theory of change. Right. We also mentioned the risks and assumptions in the theory of change. Okay. The only thing that is different here is something we call the means of verification. Or to put it simply, how do you measure that indicator? Right. Another fancy term for a very simple thing that we need to do, means of verification basically tells you about how do we get the value for it, the value for the indicator that we are trying to measure. Simple. So if the goal level indicator, I mean, let's try and understand. Activities, how can you measure, say, number of counseling sessions conducted. How will you measure it? Number of counseling sessions conducted? Anyone? How can you measure it? Could be reports. It might be documented in certain reports. There might be a project management system, an MIS, project MIS. Maybe in certain registers it is mentioned. Every time one person goes for a counseling, he or she mentions something in that register, right? That can be done. So basically that goes into means of verification. Very simple. Right? Is this more comprehensive than the theory of change and results based framework that we were talking about? Yes, right? Theory of change basically stops at telling you what are the causal pathways, how is the output the activities linked to the outputs, and how the outputs are linked to the outcomes, and outcomes to the impact level indicators. You have the causal pathways, you have the risks and assumptions mentioned. Each of those statements correspond to an indicator also. So the indicators are also mentioned, but does not tell you about what is the means of verification. How are you going to analyze that data, or from where are you going to source that data or information? So that way LFA is different from a theory of change and a results based framework. Okay. But in all practical situations, earlier, I mean, this used to be an archaic model of managing the programs. Okay, so LFA was like one of the first terms or the ways of putting all these components into one table. Right? Now, not many people use an LFA or a log frame because people have started moving to TOCs, right? Or theory of change. The reason being, once you have a theory of change, there might be an external or an internal evaluation team that will sit on it, and then they will find out the ways of collecting that information. They will map in a different component what is the means of verification, how we are going to get the information from the different sources. So the program team does not think about this anymore. They don't think about what is the means of verification anymore. Usually for all the kinds of evaluations that we conduct, we are onboarded as a third party and we are asked, where do we source this different kinds of information? We tell them that these might be the different sources of or means of verification, and then they go ahead with the evaluation. Okay, so the implementation teams don't want to get into all of this business because there is a possibility the evaluation team might come in later, a third party evaluator, and then they would say, oh no, what you did was a blunder. Okay, they should not have been the means of verification. You should have gone for more rigorous ways of collecting this information, right? So to avoid all kinds of hassles, the implementation team has simply let that go to the evaluation teams or to the process monitoring teams or the monitoring teams. Okay. So in many cases, what this happens is the RBM, the results based framework that we are getting these days, has the best of both worlds. So you would see a lot of results framework or RBMs, results based frameworks, matrices being used for all kinds of programs. Now RBMs usually have this format. So it starts off with activities on the left hand side, mentions the outputs on the right hand side, followed by outcomes and impacts. Okay, but there is a lot of customization that has started happening to the RBMs also. So what we'll do, if you remember the first RBM that I showed to you, which confused all of us, right? Basically this one. Is the table that I just showed you and this one similar in any way, except for the fact that the indicators are mentioned on the left hand side. Nothing else is similar, right? So it has a mention of baseline values in the endline targets as well. The other list that I showed you follows a different approach. These days, the kinds of RBMs that you would have is something of this sort. They'll mention the indicators on the left hand side. They will start with the highest order indicator that is available. So the highest order indicator would be your which type of indicator? Highest order indicator would be which type of indicator? Impact level indicator. Yes. So they will start off with the impact statement first. They will start off with the impact statement, and the statement will be mentioned here. So it will have a very clear description of what the statement should be. Then it will also have a target in place. The target would say 30% in first year, 50% in second year, and so on and so forth. Or it could be simply like one target, 30% by the end of the project. Okay, and then you also have a means of verification. So it has the best of both the worlds. Also, it will have a column on risks and assumptions. So RBMs these days are not following a standard template. Sometimes they would keep it very, very detailed if they have a very good understanding of what is coming their way. What is this project all about? If they've thought it through, then it becomes easier. Otherwise, they just put everything here. Target, means of verification, risks and assumptions also. So you've covered everything in the RBMs or results framework. Why is it called a results framework? Because it's just a matrix. A fancy term for a matrix would be a framework, right? And we are simply talking about results or getting to the target. It's a top-down approach. We think about the targets first in results framework, and then move into what could be the outcomes, the outputs, and the activities that need to follow with it. Okay. So it is the most popularly used project planning tool these days. Results framework. And that's why we were supposed to look into results framework today, not LFA and not theory of change. The reason why I covered all three is because we have an understanding about all these three concepts. Otherwise, we lose our, the entire argument in the differences between these three kinds of terms. Basically, they are pointing out to the same thing, but we have three very fancy terms for the same kind of work that we're doing. So I'm just de-jargonizing this for all of us here. Theory of change is simply a causal pathways, the arrows and everything that we talked about. Risks and assumptions come with it. Okay. Then we have a results framework, which basically talks about the best of both the worlds. LFA used to be one of the project planning techniques long back. The only other thing that it does, it always has a means of verification, means of measuring that indicator also with it. Right. Now RBM basically takes the best from both the worlds. It can be as detailed as possible. Right. And this is how an RF can be prepared. Okay. Now let's talk about how it is done in practice. Okay. How many of us have ever heard the term project appraisal document? PAD. Project appraisal document. Ever heard the term? No? A PPM, project planning report or project planning manual? No? Okay. So what happens for each large scale projects? There is usually a PAD document that is prepared. It is called a project appraisal document. Now it has a detailed description of everything that is going to go into this project. Right from the beginning, how is it conceptualized, why was it conceptualized? It will have a very detailed literature review of why this program is required in the first place. It will also have a literature review of what other programs were there in the same space to address the problem. What were the gaps in those programs, and how is my current program mitigating all those gaps and coming up with newer solutions. Right. Okay, is it better now? Okay, yeah. So project appraisal document is a very, very detailed document. Sometimes it might run into 100 pages, 150 pages, 200 pages that nobody bothers to read, right? But then after the project appraisal document, usually for World Bank funded assignments, you will also have a PIP in place, project implementation plan. Again a jargon, sorry. Right. So project implementation plan. So once you have thought about the world and you've documented everything in a project appraisal document, now when you go to the field, you realize some things are not possible. You go to the field, you get a hang of the practical situations. Now what happens? The project implementation plan focuses on how to implement the program with all the challenges and constraints. So it is more focused on implementation. Right. So you would, for all the World Bank assignments, you would always find a PIP also in place. project implementation plan. Again, this is a document that runs into 50 pages, 100 pages and all of that. And this becomes a holy grail for all the implementers to follow it very, very religiously. Any deviation from it either should be documented in a consultative manner. Once, if the bank, the government, and all these people sit together, they decide on, maybe this is what we wrote in the PIP and the PAT documents doesn't seem to be feasible again, say after 1 year. Now we need to make certain changes in the PIP. Then it has to be finally noted down in the minutes of the meeting. It has to be approved by the concerned project director, and then it is accepted. Otherwise, it is not. Okay. So these are some of the two documents that I am talking about. And usually these PAT documents and PIP documents have a fairly detailed results framework. So the document that I was basically showing you with the baseline and the endline targets is from the project appraisal document. Okay. Right. Any questions, queries, any confusion here? Till now? Any queries? No, because we are going to go ahead with an exercise right now. Okay, so if there are no confusions, I'll go ahead with the exercise. Do we have chart papers here? Four groups ही बस कर दीजिए. Sorry, three groups. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. We have 26 people, है ना? 26 divided by 3 is 8. 8 करके दो groups में 9 आएगा, ठीक है? 9, 9, 8, ठीक है? Okay, so we are going to be divided into 3 groups. 2 groups of which will have 9 members, and there will be one group which will be a very strong group with 8 members only. Right? One of the groups will be creating a TOC, the other group will be creating an RBM, a results framework, and there will be another group that will be creating an LFA. Okay? So either we do that, or we look into 3 different programs and create the RBM for it, whichever you choose. So there are 2 options. Either one of the groups prepare the log frame, the other group prepares the theory of change, the other group prepares the results framework for the same program, or we have 3 different programs and we prepare, one team prepares the theory of change, the other team prepares the LFA, and the other team prepares an results framework. The latter sounds interesting. Okay, let's go ahead with it. Okay, so do you want to reshuffle the way we are sitting right now? We want to stick with our friends only. Nice. Okay, so let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this becomes one group with the least number of members. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so you, the last bench there, and all of them form group number 2, and then this is the last group. So you and all of you basically form the last group. So please feel free to move from your chairs and just think about the programs. I'll just think about 3 programs. It doesn't have to be very, very detailed, but make it as detailed as possible. Okay. So team number 1, that's your target indicator. Okay. And be as creative as possible. Think about all kinds of activities that you can put in. Think of all kinds of outputs that you can come up with. Risks and assumptions, outcomes and impact level indicators. Okay. You have to create a TOC for this. A theory of change. Okay. Team 2 creates a results framework for this indicator. 20% of the households have a mean annual income of 30% or more. Yours is a results framework. So the target is very clear. 20% of the households have a mean annual income of 30% or more. Okay. Be as creative as possible. And you are basically, are you aware of the SEG model? Or just think about any skilling program. Okay. So the intervention here is a skilling program. The intervention here is fairly simple. It's basically an awareness program that you need to conduct. Okay. And for the last team, a log frame needs to be created. Can you come up with any example? Do you want to give a target for yourself? I'll come up with a target then. Swachh Bharat Mission, SBM, has been able to create a behavioral change in 50% households. Right? You need to create an log frame for this. Please sit in groups, please have a discussion. Please join them, or you guys please join them and have a discussion and start working on that paper.
Can we get an example of that now?
Sure. Why not? I'll just put that on the screen. I'll put that on the screen. So this is the example, or this is how it looks. Sorry. What happened again? Again. Just hit a back. Yeah. Forget about project summary here. You don't have to write this column. Okay. Just write what are the goal. What is the goal is very clear. It's basically that. The outcome, outputs and the activities, and then the indicators for each of them, means of verification and any risks and assumptions. Similarly, if any other team wants me to put something on the screen, just let me know. And if you are stuck anywhere, just let me know. I'll probably come to your table and help you. Okay, so there is a timeline to it. It is 12:55 now. Sorry, need your attention. Everyone, need your attention. It is 12:55 right now. Let's come up with a solution in the next 20 minutes, which means by 1:15, all of us should be ready, and then we'll have like 5 minutes for presentation for each team. Okay. 5 minutes of presentation, so we will close the session at 1:30. Okay. Please start working on it.
Hi, so we are doing RBM result-based framework
Yeah.
on the increase in the number of annual income of these households by 30%.
Yeah.
So our impact is to improve the standard of living.
Right.
So the activities that we're trying to do is improving the skills of these households, individuals, and all.
Right.
So in this way, we're increasing the job opportunities, and we're also trying to increase the individuals into culminating into self-help groups, combining together. So this is how we're trying to do the activities. Output, maybe through the skillings and all, maybe people will be well trained. So we've got just one output that we could think of.
Okay.
Outcome would be these people who are well trained and who have got these job opportunities,
Right.
So they'll be self-employed, and then their skills will be like developed, like they'll be more self-employable.
Yeah.
Risks and assumptions is that people are not willing to adapt to new change in their way of life and all. And then unforeseen circumstances, maybe like if you're trying to provide them a certain skill, maybe they're not willing to do that. Maybe they're trying to do like
Right.
so. Target is, as we've said, we're trying to increase the number of the income by 20%.
Right. And what was the means of verification that you had adopted for all of this?
We could not think of it.
No worries. No worries. Okay. So let us all think this together. Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much, Team B. Let's discuss in detail what could have been done here. Okay. So let's think of the activities first. First of all the youth in the age group of 18 to 35 years could have been identified from the study catchment areas. Right? Youth 18 to 35 years identified. That could have been one of the activities. What could have been the second activities? Maybe these youth could have been sent to certain training center, maybe in the district or the block headquarters. Right? These identified youth provided technical skill training. And before even doing that, one of the risks and assumptions that you mentioned, let us ask them what they would want to do or what kind of a skill they would want to adopt. Right? So we get a sense of the skills required by the youth. Activity number 4, they undergo a certification program. For all kinds of skill development programs, they usually receive a certificate towards the end of the program. So they undertake a certification program. Obviously, they get certificates if they are able to complete the program, right? And give maybe an examination also. Once that is done, they are included in placements. Some placement campaign is being launched, right? So all of that is contributing to outputs. What are the outputs? The first output is very simple. Youth identified. Youth received technical skills, right? Better knowledge for technical requirements. That becomes like 3 simple outputs. Okay. Outcomes would be what? Outcomes would be? I think this is one area wherein most people are struggling with. Am I correct? Outcomes? Okay, so to put it very simply, outcome is a stage that requires more time than just translation into outputs. So if they've gathered some skills, what will happen? They'll be better prepared for the job sector, right? Better prepared for the job sector. What else will happen? Let's say nothing else happens. Okay. Or let's just say they've received the certificates. So certification requirements ensure better employment opportunities. Impact indicator, 20% of the households have a mean annual income of 30% or more. Okay, now let's talk about the other things that go into the RBM or the RF. What was that? How do we measure it? The means of verification. How do we measure it? This one. A household survey. Basically, that is a part of the evaluation. So, household survey as a part of the evaluation. Right? How do we measure this? So please keep it a thumb rule, a simple thumb rule in all these kinds of situations is you can have an MIS to measure the activities and the outputs. आपने कितने लोगों को ट्रेन किया ये आप पता लगा सकते हैं, कितने लोगों का अवेयरनेस बढ़ गया ये आप पता लगा सकते हैं using an MIS or a register. It is very simple. You can always look into these kinds of numbers from the documents that are already being maintained by the project teams or by the program teams. You already have a record of it. You don't have to rely on a third-party evaluation for it, right? The third-party evaluation comes in here and here. So you can always rely on a third-party evaluation for giving you 2 kinds of steps, the outcomes and the impact level indicators. Okay, so this might also come from a household evaluation. Household survey, that is a part of the evaluation. What about outputs? You get this information from your MIS or your project documents. All these informations can come from your MIS and your project documents if you have something documented. If you don't have something documented, then obviously it's a guesswork, right? Now, obviously we'll have some risks and assumptions to it. Let's say that they don't receive the certifications. Let's say the training organization that was supposed to be onboarded dropped out because of some reason. There was a massive slump in the job sector. Right? All these could be the risks and assumptions here. Are we all in agreement here, or is there something that I am missing here on RPA? Okay, just tell me, just think about the TOC. Just think about the TOC in this situation, a theory of change in this situation. How would you compare a theory of change with this sort of an alignment? What is missing here? What am I not able to read properly? I don't know which activities are leading to which outputs. Right? I don't know which activities, is this activity linked to this, or is activity leading to this? I have no clue. Whereas in a theory of change, I have those causal pathways in place. I have those arrows marked very clearly. Right? So as I mentioned, all organizations actually refer to RBMs or results framework these days, which means the results framework would have adapted to these requirements also. So what I told you earlier, or what I showed you earlier, was that every time you mention an outcome level indicator, say whatever, better equipped for job sector, you also mention output number 1, output number 2 along with it. And you also mention activity number 1, activity number 2 for each of it. So now it is aligned, right? So now you know that output 1 and activity 1, activity 2, and then output 2 followed by activity 4, activity 2. The same activity could be there in both these, right? So now you know that which of the activities are aligned to which of the outputs and which of the outcomes. So this is another way of presenting the results framework. So the results framework has been able to encapsulate what TOC says, what LFA does, right? So it's a mix of the best of both the worlds. Now let's come to, who will go in next? Team C, Team A, please go in. Yeah.
I'll start, sir.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone.
Everyone, please listen here.
So the task assigned to us was to create a theory of change when the impact is 30% children receiving the COVID vaccination. So the activities that we have listed out to achieve this, the first being conducting a survey, then the second being coordination among stakeholders, the third being awareness, that could include a one-on-one awareness program, one-on-one awareness, mass awareness, supplying of IEC materials and home visits. And the fourth activity is the vaccination drive. And then the output that would arise out of these activities, for the first one being that from the survey, we find out how many children are vaccinated and not. The second output being that there is participation among the concerned stakeholders. The third output would be that people will be aware of the pros of the vaccination, and there's a clearing of any misconceptions. And the fourth output would be there's an increase in the number of participation in the vaccination drive. Then when we come to the outcomes, the first outcome could be that the health standards will improve. Second, there's a reduction in COVID complications or deaths among children. And there's an increase in the number of vaccinated children. And that is how we reach the impact of 30% children receiving COVID vaccination. And the risk and assumptions here would be that there are preconceived notions of the COVID vaccines, and there's also unwillingness to take the COVID vaccine. So that is it, sir.
Right, great. Really nice. I mean, they've captured almost everything in one document. Sorry, can you please show me the document once? A huge round of applause for Team A. There's only one major issue with this.
Yes, sir.
The rest, everything is fine. The rest, everything is fine here. Arrows are missing. Very true. What else? We discussed that theory of change is a bottoms-up approach. Right? So it's more like a tree. You start with the roots, then you move up to the outputs, then you move up to the outcomes, and then finally to the impact level indicator. Right? So please remember this, it's a bottom-up approach. You will have to think of a tree wherein the roots are your activities. Okay? That is the only thing. Otherwise, great job. Thank you so much. Yeah, finally, Team C, please come in. Anyone can come, anyone. Please, come. So it's good that we are learning from each other, right? That was the entire objective of the activity. So that we learn from each other and then we get tired and then we go ahead and have our lunch. Right?
Okay, good afternoon. Our task is on logical frameworks.
Yeah.
So we have given the task is 50% of the household exhibit behavior change from the Swachh Bharat mission.
Yeah.
So our goal here is that is 50% of household which exhibit behavioral change. And then our means of verification is household survey, through household surveys.
Yeah.
And there is an assumption people are not aware of the proper hygiene.
Yeah.
So outcome is the percentage of household practicing better hygiene. And then the mean of verification is from Ashas or the Anganwadi workers. And the risk assumption is acceptance of the people. And then for the output, indicators is people are much better aware on hygiene, and then the means of verification same Ashas and Anganwadi workers, and the resolution also we got acceptance of people, and then our activities is through group discussion or community outreach program, IC activities or shows, and then the means of verification is from registers, the numbers of the attendees, and the risk assumption is people coming forward to these programs or shows.
Perfect.
So that's
So they've mapped everything. They've mapped the means of verification, they've mapped the risk and assumptions also, and they've listed the different indicators also. Their study was a different one, and I intentionally kept it that way because ideally I would have said that, the overall sanitation practices have improved in 50% households. That should have been the indicator. But in their situation, usually this becomes more of a outcome indicator. Now there are different ways of looking at it. Okay, so this is majorly kind of a KABP study, something what we call it. Again a jargon. So KABP, you work on knowledge, then this would bring about some change in attitudes, then it becomes behavior change, and finally it is translated into practice. Okay, so washing hands after defecation is a practice. The knowledge that you should use or you should wash your hands after defecation is K, knowledge. The moment you provide this knowledge to them, they might be looking at other people also. Okay, the other households who have received this training have started doing this. So they'll start thinking, okay, people have taken this seriously, maybe I should too. Maybe, so this is basically an initial stages of just imbibing some good sort of a behavior. So that becomes your attitude. And if that is completely inculcated in you, that yes, you are completely aware that yes, you should be using soap after defecation, right? Or washing your hands after soap. After defecation using soap. This becomes a behavior. So every time you defecate, you come back, you wash your hands with soap and water. That becomes a behavior, right? And obviously that becomes a practice also. So behavior and practice basically become the outcome level indicators. Now what the impact level indicator would become is something that their team already thought about. Their team said the impact level indicator would be that the number of cases of diarrhea might reduce. Number of cases of waterborne diseases might reduce. Right? That becomes, so if they are washing their hands, the chances of them or their household members falling sick also decreases. That becomes the impact level indicator, which they thought about, but they put that in outputs, but it is essentially an impact level indicator. So kudos to them for thinking about this indicator. Thank you so much for such a good presentation and putting in all these efforts to come up with the log frame, the theory of change, and the results framework. Okay, now we have a clarity on what these three things are. Okay, and are we going to forget about all of this in the next 1 month? Right? Just keep that documented somewhere. So just in case if you forget also, if you simply have a look at it, I think that should be more than enough. In any case, I'll be sharing the deck also with you. Thank you so much for this first session. This is still not complete. So we'll be coming after lunch. Let's take a break. And it's what time right now? It is 1:39. It's 1:40 right now. Let's come back at 2:45. 2:45 we resume the next session, which is going to be a very, very interesting session now. We're coming on to evaluation designs.